have a little bit of things to set up. Aaron, did you still want to talk?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Just making sure. Yep, I gotta do this real quick, sorry. Oh, thank you. Let this one. Okay, as Dave had said, I am James Chang, as Dave said. Let me introduce myself. As Dave said, I've only been at SBA since August. So when I approached him to be an ambassador or also a speaker at SBA, that was my first meeting, my very first coffee and contact. But he was asking for requests, and I thought, well, I'm from the area, I'm Rolling Metals, and I could speak, so I just volunteered. My parents are from Taiwan, actually. So they're Taiwanese immigrants. I was born at Rush Hospital and raised in Rolling Meadows, went to Central Road, went to Plum Grove Junior High, and graduated from Fremont High School.
Woo!
So, that's the first time I ever got a clap for Fremont High School.
Yeah.
Just for Plum Grove. So I'm actually one of you. I'm not a new person. I actually grew up here. So, also, as Dave said, I'm an introvert. So I thought this was a good way to introduce myself to a lot of people without actually meeting people one-on-one, being very efficient. So, before we begin, do we have any business owners or entrepreneurs here? Okay, awesome. A lot, thank you. Has anybody heard of You Incorporated? You is you. Everybody is a CEO or leader of their own business, yourself. So You Incorporated is anything to do with you. So I wanted to make this very relevant to each individual, but I know we're talking about teams and leadership, but it really does start with you. So, as Dave mentioned, I asked this question: is leadership something you're born with, or something that your environment teaches you? Nature or nurture? So, as I go through this, just ask yourself that. Before we talk about leadership, we need to talk about what is leadership. So this is from John Maxwell, who's a very famous business coach. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So anything you do in terms of influencing people, not just as a boss, not just as your title as a CEO, but even your peers or people above you, if you have some sort of influence, then that is considered leadership. When we talk about leadership too, it doesn't have to be position. It could be you're changing somebody's actions that they normally would not do if you were not there. So because you're there, you're affecting people's normal interactions. And that's important because we all have some sort of influence over somebody. So as I said in my background, I've spoken all around the world, but what's nice about speaking at Schaumburg is that I can share things that only people in Schaumburg understand. For instance, some idiosyncrasies like, why does Meacham, when you go north, suddenly change to Plum Grove Road? Yeah. And why does Schaumburg have an old Plum Grove Road not even a mile away? There's two Plum Grove Roads. Why are they not connected? Or in Rolling Meadows, we have a street called Kirchhoff. But according to Mr. Grimm, my physics teacher in Friend, he said it's actually pronounced Kirchhoff, because he's a German physics teacher. Also, if you guys know who grew up in the suburbs, there wasn't much to do here. So the only place we did was Palindrome. It was a nice little place to dip, yes. Okay. Or who remembers Dirty Nellies, but not the nice Dirty Nellies. The Dirty Nellies is dirty. Okay? All right, those born here and raised here could understand. As I said, I'm from Rolling Meadows, but I didn't go to Rolling Meadows High School. I was west of Plum Grove Road. So I went to Fremont High School. This is from the vault. Who remembers this place? Does anybody know where this is at?
Oh yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's right, it's Woodfield Mall, the red carpets.
Yeah.
That is my mother and that's me. I think I'm 2 years old. Look how excited I am to be at Although my diaper's looking a little heavy, so I don't know if I'm excited or I'm really relieved. You know? This is a little bit hard. Does anybody know where this is at? This is our first apartment. This is
Town Square.
It is Brookwood Way in Rolling Meadows off Kirchhoff. So that's the first apartment that I lived in. It's still there. How about this? Does anybody know where this is at? That is still Woodfield, that's correct. But I'm wearing my cool 90s jacket and my fake Air Jordans. Does anybody know where this is at? that is the old Motorola Museum. My dad worked for Motorola, and my mom was a tour guide at Motorola Museum. My dad actually graduated from Harvard College, and I learned to drive at Harvard College. That's where I got my driver's license. So I'm fully integrated in this area. This place, who I am today, is because of Schaumburg and the northwest suburbs. So there's no way I can talk about leadership in a short hour. So I'm going to give you a framework, but it's just a framework that I can present it. This is what we did in the military. We have a strategic, we have operational, and we have tactical. So strategic is like the big picture, your overarching goals. Operational is kind of like your operating system, your daily kind of like your processes. Your tactical is like the very fine details, the tactics, the procedures, the things that you do, like your techniques. So before we get into this though, I gotta talk about the situation, right? Anybody heard of the 5 regrets of the dying? Ronnie Ware. So if you don't know about the 5 regrets of the dying, basically it's a palliative nurse who is taking care of people near their end of life. So in the general lifespan, 70 to 80 years, people are born, they go to school, work, they have family, and then their last 12 weeks, they know that they're about to die. And because of that, they're put into a care of a nurse like Ronnie Ware. And she took care of over 3,000 patients and asked them, is there anything that you regret? And these 5 responses kept coming up. So what are those 5 responses? I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected me. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Number 3, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. Number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. And number 5, I wish that I had let myself be happier. Now, I bring this up because not to bring people down, but we're all still young. Like, this for me is a check that I don't want to live when I'm 80 and come back with any regrets and say, am I living true to these 5 tenets, that I'm living without regret, that I'm living true to myself, that I'm taking those kind of risks, that was to let me really be satisfied with my life. So I bring this up as just a situation, but also this is a situation not as the older generation, but the younger generation. So as a leader, inevitably, you're going to be leading the next generation, Gen Z, millennials, whoever they are. And they are looking at their parents and grandparents of being loyal to a company. But if you just saw last year in the recent months in like the tech layoffs, 3,000, 5,000 people are getting laid off, and they're saying, why would I be loyal to a company when they're not going to be loyal to myself? You have a question, okay, has anybody heard of quiet quitting? Yes, quiet quitting, so basically it's this, basically you're not quitting, you're doing just enough so you don't get fired. So that's called quiet quitting, it's just enough, and that's what people are believing. It's like, I'm gonna just do just enough to not get fired, but I'm not really gonna put my whole effort into this. You guys might not have heard of this, but this is very common in China, 996. Jack Ma made it really famous. He was the founder of Alibaba, and basically says if you want to get ahead of the life, especially in the technology world, you have to work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. And yeah, he got a lot of flack for that, but that's what people really believe, is that they have to work overtime in order to make it as an entrepreneur or in the tech world to be successful. You guys heard of planking? This is also in China as well. In China, they're not allowed to protest. So instead of protesting, this is what kids do. They just lay there and say, we're not going to work because there's no good jobs. We're not going to get ahead. So they kind of give up. So how do you lead the next generation? What people are thinking? People want to work for companies that align with their values. That's the modern age. It's just not just being loyal to a company. People are looking at a company and saying, what do you value? What is important? And people want to buy from companies that align with their values as well. So strategic now. So this is the situation that we're dealing with in terms of the workforce and people in this generation and the next generation. I owe this question to Arthur Brooks. He's a professor at Harvard and the Kennedy School. He also just wrote a book with Oprah Winfrey. You have to ask your purpose. So the question you ask for many people is, as an individual, why were you born? The other second question you ask people is, what are you willing to die for? Everybody should ask this question themselves because they need to have purpose in life. Remember those 5 regrets? We don't want to have those regrets. And as a business leader, you have to ask your question too, why does my organization or department exist? There's a reason that you have a company or a department. So why does it exist? This is also from Simon Sinek. I'll start with your why. He quotes, great companies don't hire skilled people and motivate them. They hire already motivated people and inspire them. So how do you inspire your people to really want to work for you? So then, once you understand your why, we go into the vision. What the vision does is articulate your purpose. It provides direction and a destination. And you also want to talk about the values. We talk about people want to work for companies that align with the values. But you as an individual, especially a founder or a leader, have your own values. So what is the value? It forges the path to get to the destination. It can shape culture, but it must be backed by action. So many people put these values up, like say honesty. But it doesn't mean anything if you yourself are not honest. So how do you shape culture? Is that you have to take my action. Yes, thank you. That is me. That is me as a gymnast at Friends High School, freshman year. I didn't want to be a gymnast though. I wanted to be a ninja. But they didn't have ninja school back then. I saw the Karate Kid and thought, I can do karate. Daniel LaRusso's karate is not that advanced. So I'm like, well, how do I become a ninja? Because I couldn't find a rat in the sewer. So I took it upon myself and said, okay, well, if I got karate down, what do ninjas do? They flip. So I got to take gymnastics. So I became a gymnast in Friends High School. And after Friends High School, I was a team captain, but asked my coach to write a recommendation to West Point. And he wrote on my recommendation, James is not a natural leader. It is true, I'm not. I'm an introvert, I like to stay by myself. These things just doesn't come naturally to me. So I thought, well, let's go to West Point because it's known for leadership. So if you haven't seen leadership or haven't seen West Point, it is a beautiful campus. This is the parade field at West Point. These are the cadets, and I guarantee you they are sweating because their uniforms are made of wool. That uniform on top, by the way, is the same uniform you wear in wintertime. The only difference is that they change pants. So it's cold and hot, so you're never comfortable at West Point. They just make the cadets suffer. This is an aerial view of West Point. Here's that parade field, here's that baseball field. All the cadets live here. And I like to put the Forbes up just to mess with my Harvard Ivy League people. Forbes said it was one of the best colleges to go to because you have a job after you leave West Point. If you leave West Point, you basically have to go into the Army. And I wanted you guys to get a taste of your first day at West Point, just because I just like to relive my past.
Some of these specs will ultimately become generals. Some will drop out in a matter of weeks.
Not wearing it, sir.
I'm not waiting, sir. That way, 4 responses. Waiting for responses.
Sir, my 4 responses.
Not quick enough.
Sir, my 4 responses are yes, sir, no, sir, no, excuse, sir, sir, I do not understand.
One more time, you get.
Sir, my 4 responses are yes, sir, no, sir, no excuse, sir, sir, I do not understand.
You get away from name tag.
Sir, I have no excuse.
That is not one of your 4 responses. You just told me it's a new kid. What are your 4 responses to that?
Sir, my 4 responses are yes, sir. Sir, my 4 responses are yes, sir, no, sir, no excuse, sir, sir, I do not have any.
Try it again. New cadet, you're having a sit-down class.
No, sir.
Yes, you are. What are your 4 responses?
Sir, my 4 responses are yes, sir, no, sir, no excuse, sir, sir, I do not understand.
Why do you not have a name tag?
No excuse, sir.
Much better. You're not against real one.
No, sir.
Yeah, relive my trauma. So the first year we at West Point, you only have 4 responses. I'm just kidding, by the way, I don't have any trauma. Sarcasm. You only can say yes, sir, ma'am, no, excuse, sir, ma'am, do not understand. Now in the video, that new cadet probably had a good excuse why he doesn't have a name tag, right? He's an upperclassman, forgot to give it to him, whatever it may be. But the reality is, nobody cares about your excuses. Nobody wants to hear your excuses. And what West Point taught me in the first year is that don't look for excuses, accept the responsibility, and find the solution. So one of the principles I've learned there, and there's a famous book called Extreme Ownership, is just take ownership, even though it's not your fault. Many times, if you want to get things done, as a leader, you take all the ownership, you give away all the praise. So everything stops with you, whether it starts even before you're a manager or supervisor, learn to take ownership and then find the solution. Another thing I learned at West Point is that before you can lead, you must first learn what it's like to be led. So how it works at West Point is the cadet leadership, development leadership system. And as a freshman, you have a sophomore that's in charge of you. And then as a junior, you're in charge of 2 sophomores and then 2 or 3 other freshmen. And then as a senior, at the minimum, you have what they call platoon. you have 3 juniors, and then those juniors are in charge of 2 or 3 sophomores, and then those 2 or 3 sophomores are in charge of 2 or 3 lower cadets, what we call as plebes. So what's interesting too about being led is that you can observe leadership. So every person has had a manager, every person has had a boss. And what you do is you learn from the boss things that you like about them and things that you don't want to adapt. Even now as a young 20-year-old, 17-year-old, you're learning that. And so another principle I learned is that humility and growth. You're always learning and you're always growing. You're never ever make it. You never come to the land of nirvana or wherever place you're at. You're always learning. So just to show you, I really went to West Point. These are some pictures of me as a cadet. And then after West Point, you graduate and you're in the Army. So this is me right after graduation in the Army. So what's interesting, anybody you veterans here, by the way? You ever been in the military before? So in the military, what's interesting about this is that, let's just give a scenario. Let's say you've worked at a company for over 15 years, 10 to 15 years, and a brand new college student comes into your company, and now he or she is your boss. That's how it works in the military, is that you have non-commissioned officers who's been there for 10 or 15 years, and you graduate from West Point or ROTC, and now you're the boss. You're a fresh cadet, a fresh lieutenant at 21 to 23 years old, and you're leading a platoon or a group of soldiers. So, but if you know entering into any organization is that you don't have all the answers. Like, especially as a lieutenant, you're not like, you don't know anything about the Army. You've just been through 4 years of a fake Army system. So what you learn as you get there is you learn to just be quiet and assess and learn from people who have experience. And I would recommend that anybody who goes into a new organization before they make all these changes is to stop and just listen and learn the culture of the company before you start making changes. Gain the trust of people to show them that you know what you're doing. I was also deployed in Iraq. This is a year in Iraq 2004, that's my platoon. This is a famous picture. That little guy right behind the American flag. Here we are taking care of a cache. In Iraq, we never did find those weapons of mass destruction. So we don't, but we did a lot of good work there. There's another cache IED, which is improvised explosive devices. It's a platoon sergeant. There's me working very hard. It's very hard to be a platoon leader, so my soldiers caught me caught napping at the Humvee. So here is myself. This is a difference of 10 years. Freshman in high school, college, and this is me leaving the Army. So let's see the growth. Even in a short decade, things have changed really rapidly, especially when you're young. You see those eyes have seen more. So we now talk about vision before we even talk about leadership, because people have joined a company or organization because they believe in the vision of the company. But people, if they're leaving your company, it's because it's not that they just stop believing in the vision, it's because of the leadership. So what is leadership? Here's some statistics from Gallup. Less than 30% of employees are engaged at work. 91% of employees believe their boss lacks emotional intelligence. 70% of adults have left a job to get away from a bad manager. Harvard Business Review, 1998, wrote, "What makes a leader?" And what this professor said is that there's 5 components that make up emotional intelligence. So what he said is, emotional intelligence is just as important as intelligence, if not more important. As you raise up in the scale of leadership, technical skills are still important, but not as important as a leader, because you're dealing and delegating with people. You're in the business of people, especially as a CEO, business development manager. So what are the 5 components of emotional intelligence? You may know this: self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy for others, social skills, managing relationships, and then motivation. A passion for work that goes beyond money and status. If you guys know Gary Vee, he's a famous entrepreneur. He wrote this recently, within the last couple months, on LinkedIn. Soft skills are actually the hard skills in business. Kindness, empathy, compassion, those are soft skills, not technical. This is actually an article that just came out last week. LinkedIn says that the hottest skill to have right now can't be learned in the classroom. You guys know what that is? They said it's adaptability, followed closely with soft skills. This is a Fortune magazine article literally just last week. Did I put it? Yep, February 8th, last week. So the question you have to ask yourself is, can one develop EQ and soft skills? Obviously, I believe that's true, or else I won't be speaking here. So the first part is knowing yourself, and I love this quote. There are many people who think they want to be matadors, only to find themselves in the ring with 2,000 pounds of bull bearing down on them, and then discover that what they really wanted was to wear tight pants and hear the crowd roar. So knowing yourself really has to know yourself in terms of motivation. Like, why do you want a certain thing? A lot of people want to be CEOs, or in the Army, a lot of people want to be Special Forces or Navy SEALs. But do they really want to be that special category, or they just wanted the respect? They wanted to have the crowd roar. You have to ask yourself, what's your motivations, and what is your reasons for doing certain things? And that happens with any sort of action in your behavior. What are your motivations? The other part is, if you do not know yourself, how can you connect, understand, and empathize with others? So it's a lot easier to understand yourself because the connection between your brain and heart is right away. There's no filter, right? But to know somebody else who has a different background, who has a different experience, who have a different mindset, and they have to be able to communicate to you as you have to be able to communicate clearly about yourself. If you don't know yourself, how do you expect to know somebody else who's completely different from you? So it begins with knowing yourself. EQ, self-awareness. I like to use this one. This is nonviolent communication with Marshall Rosenberg. Some people use Maslow's hierarchy needs. But basically what Rosenberg had said was that there's 9 basic needs that everybody needs, right? There's a requirement. Like everybody needs rest. Everybody needs food. There's no argument with that. But there's other things that people need in terms of empathy, autonomy, community, creativity, all that stuff. And when you don't get those needs met, then it's manifested through emotions. So, for example, anybody been hangry before? Right? Hungry and angry. Some people don't know what hangry means. It's a combination of you're hungry and you get hangry easily. Anybody not get enough sleep and you feel tired and fatigued? So when you get your needs met, your emotions are satisfied. You feel happy, you feel pleasant, you have pleasure, right? Now these are not one-to-one correlation. There's different ways where your emotions manifest. And your emotions are not reality though. Your emotions are a symptom of needs, of your needs being met and not met. And when they're unmet, then these are some examples of your emotions coming out. Fatigue, afraid, quiet, angry, whatever it may be. So the question you ask yourself daily is that when you feel any sort of emotion, you have to ask yourself, why am I feeling this emotion? Ask yourself, is there something going on between something in my heart? It can't be everybody has a problem. Like everybody is wrong and you're perfect, right? So if you have a problem with this person and that person and another person, guess who the common denominator is? Yeah, that's you, right? And you can't change anybody. You can only change yourself. So I like to use this as an example. It's a framework. There's a lot of psychological frameworks out there. But emotions, EQ, starts with you, understand needs being met, and then when you see somebody who's angry or sad or something, then you can communicate with them, or you have more empathy for them that they may be going through some hard things. The other part you have to learn is how to lead yourself. So the question is if you can't lead yourself, then how do you expect to lead others? Like you control your own actions. You have your own disciplines. But if you can't even control and discipline yourself, how do you expect other people to listen and follow you? So at the very beginning, not only knowing yourself, but having the discipline to lead yourself. I like Atomic Habits by James Clear, if you're familiar with them. He talks about behavior change, and he talks about 3 influences. One is outcomes, processes, and identity. Outcomes is basically you have some sort of result. So for instance, if you want to run a 10-minute mile, that's a result. You want to run the marathon. That's a result, that's an outcome. But what happens after you've accomplished that, or after you run that marathon? Where is your next motivation to continue doing that? So that's a very surface level way to change your behavior, but it works. The other next is processes. So for instance, every morning I wake up at 5 a.m. and I go run, no matter what. So that's a process, that's a discipline. Whether you have a result or not, you just say, I'm always gonna do that. So you have a routine. He says the strongest behavior change is identity. So that means like, I am a runner, and I like to run just because of the pure joy of it. You guys remember the quote, the person who loves to walk will walk further than the person who walks 1,000 miles? Like that, the idea is that if you just love doing what you do, then you're automatically gonna behave that way. So, I like this too. It's just another framework to motivate you. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. So if you believe yourself a runner, then every time you run, it's a vote to help you become a runner. So a lot of people talk about behavior change, and it takes 3 weeks to really like process and synthesize a behavior. And that's great for 3 weeks, but what do you do daily? So every day you say like, well, I want to be healthy. So every time you eat a healthy food, I'm a healthy person. Or every time I go to the gym, I'm exercising. You know, I don't have to exercise hard, but just getting to the gym is a step in terms of being a healthy person. Very small, simple steps that you can convince yourself to do things. But also now we talk about leadership is that leadership affects culture. So what is culture? It's the unspoken guidance and principles people adhere to within an organization. So we talk about values, but culture really is the way things are, how you do things. And the best way to affect culture, especially as a leader, is to lead by example. So people are always going to lead you. Just because you're the boss, people are automatically going to look at you because of your position. So if you think you want to be professional at a company, then you have to dress professionally. If you want to be professional, but you're always coming in shorts and disheveled hair, then why would people think that this is a professional organization? You can say that you want to be healthy, but if you're always eating bad things, then people are going to observe that versus just listen to you. So this is another saying that people have said, culture is caught rather than taught. People say that about kids a lot too. It's just like they catch your actions rather than teaching them. But I really believe that culture is the same way. It's caught rather than taught. So if you think that we want to be punctual, and you're going to show up on time to an organization or an event, then you have to lead by that example. People observe as a leader, as a person in general. I like to show this picture. This is a picture when I was in the Philippines. You'll see here with these kids, and I used to be stationed in Hawaii, and it's called the shaka, right? Hang ten. So I'm hanging 10, but nobody's looking at me. They're like, what is this weird Asian military dude? But you'll see in these next couple slides, I continue just being fun, being silly. I did a peace sign. And you look at the last pictures and you see all the kids having fun and laughing. This is maybe a span of 30 seconds. And I like to show this example is that you can change the dynamics of culture. It starts with you. And yeah, maybe you're not the boss. Maybe you're not a manager. But you are influencing somebody. And if you give people permission to be silly, then you are, by acting silly, you're giving people permission to do that. So I like this show. It's a very microcosm of what an individual can do when they are part of an organization or part of a new environment. As I said before, the reality check is that you can't control anybody. Everybody has free will. Everybody has a way to decide what they want to do. So you can probably force somebody to do something for a second, maybe temporarily, but what happens when you force somebody to do something is that they grow bitterness, or they grow resentful to you. So you have to give people, especially in America, the option to decide what to do with their life. The only thing you can control is yourself, is your attitude and how you respond. So once again, if you can't even control your attitude, and how you respond to something, how do you expect somebody else to be able to control themselves? One example I like to give, I had a friend who was very similar to me. We went to a room, and his first perspective of the room was, oh, everybody's looking at us, we're so strange, you know, like we're new people, and we're different from everybody else. And so he was very, contrite, like very shy. But my viewpoint, same, I'm walking in with them, we're in the same room, and I'm like, wow, nobody knows who we are. This is a chance to show them who we are, and it gets them a chance to know who, not just know us, but learn about everybody else. Like, my perspective and your attitude affects how you behave in a room. It could be the same situation, but your mind is in the battle with your mind. So I say this too, you can't force anybody to do anything, but you can influence and you could inspire. And that's what leadership is. So this leadership chart is once again from John Maxwell. It talks about the 5 levels of leadership. And I'd like to show this because the lowest form of leadership is your position. So people follow you because they have to. You're the CEO, you're the manager. But what happens when they're outside the company or out of the job? Are people still willing to follow you? So just because of your position, you have some influence, but you have very low level of influence. A better influence way is to have a relationship with somebody. They follow you because they like you, you're friends, but as a leader, that only gets you so much because if they follow you just because you're friends, they're still looking for some sort of return. So a higher form of leadership is that you deliver results, especially in an organization. This is a business group. So because you deliver results, people say, well, this guy's gonna take care of me, he delivers results, he's also a friend, he's also a boss or manager. Or maybe you're not a manager, maybe you're the best salesperson. Because you deliver results, people are gonna look at you as an example. Reproduction is basically developing other people. So what are you doing for them? And then pinnacle is what you represent. So they respect you because of who you are, because of your values, because of what you represent, right? So I like to show this. More importantly, you may not get all the levels of leadership, but more importantly, I like to show the lowest level is just because you're the boss doesn't mean that you have influence over people, or you have a very low level influence. So operationally, these are some of the principles that I talked about in case you need a reminder. Ownership, humility, develop, know yourself, lead yourself, discipline, habits, be the example. Now, the other part is be part of a community. And the reason I wanted to talk to SBA is because this is a community. Like, having a community keeps, at least for me, keeps me accountable. It also makes me learn from other people. As an introvert, I probably wouldn't go out and meet people one-on-one, but because of my focus group, we're doing these one-on-ones, which forces us to meet people and schedule time with them. And you know what though, it's been great, because it gets you out of your comfort zone and you get to learn about other people. And the other part too is I say get a coach. Now, for instance, like physically, I've been working out for decades. I still have a coach, because a coach can look at you and give you an outside perspective about whether you're squatting well, if maybe you're forgetting something, maybe you have an impingement in your hip or something. They can give you an outside view, they can teach you how to do things right. So if we have a coach in terms of the gym, why not have a coach for business? Especially when you're dealing with so many different things, you need somebody to take you outside of that and think about the big picture, especially if you're a manager or a leader or a CEO. You can't be dealing with fires every day. So having somebody say, hey, let's take a bigger picture and step outside it, and it's just like a painting. Let's say you observe a boat, but maybe your coach can say, hey, did you notice that there's a sunset over there? What was the artist trying to do there? What is going on in your company that maybe you need help with, and help you focus on different things? So, going back to the situation of the 5 regrets, when we look at the principles that I'm talking about in terms of your needs, to me, what a lot of these people who have regrets is because they never had their needs met. So for instance, I wish I had the courage to live true to myself, not what the life others expected of me. Sounds to me like they weren't living their authentic self, that they weren't being real with people. They had to pretend in front of other people. And as Brene Brown talks about the power of vulnerability, is that people don't connect with your false or your pretend self. They connect with you when you're real. And how do you be real? You reveal your shame. You reveal things that you don't want people to know about you. That's your weakness, but that's how people connect. Whatever it may be, authentically, you have to be able to, in a safe environment, show who you are. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. So that tells me that they had no purpose, or they didn't know the purpose of the company. The purpose of a leader or the boss is to communicate the vision of the company and inspire people to work for that company. I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. Once again, authenticity, maybe there's no psychological safety. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Once again, they weren't in community, or they weren't living authentically. And I wish I let myself be happier, once again, authentically, on purpose. We all want a purpose in our life. We all have a reason for living. So what is your purpose individually, but also how does your individual purpose affect and influence the organizational purpose as well? So just an example of how we can not live with regrets. So now we get very tactical. So what do I do every day? Now this is just me, I say this for myself, but you don't have to do this, but I get very tactical. So there's a physical side of people. So sleep, nutrition, exercise, in that order. Like everybody needs 6 to 8 hours of sleep. You know what time I went to bed last night? 8:30, because I woke up today at 5 in the morning. Okay, if you do 9 o'clock, add 8, just simple math, 8 hours from that is 5 a.m. So if you're looking for 8 hours of sleep, then you're looking for trying to get in bed at that certain time. And some people argue, well, I can't go to sleep that early. Well, you heard of circadian rhythms, a routine. When you do that routine, then you start falling in line with your natural habitat. Nutrition. Why do I say nutrition is important? Because you can't outwork a bad diet. So nutrition is very, very important because you have to eat good foods, good, organic or whatever you want to call a diet, or if you want to meat or vegetables or vegan, whatever it may be. You know your body better than anybody else. But what does this have to do with leadership? It's because your decision making is affected by your physical surrounding and your physical body. Like when you're tired and fatigued, you're not making good decisions when you have lack of sleep. There's even, this is failure of nerve, in terms of when your pulse is over 90 beats per minute, that means you're going back to the reptilian mindset. You're not making good decisions. Even though you think you're thinking logically, you're not. So whenever you have a heated argument with somebody, let's say you're arguing with your spouse or somebody, when your pulse is raised to 90 beats per minute, even though you think, oh, I'm right, this is logical, you're not thinking right. Physically, it affects your mindset. Anyways, so actually, exercise. You know, I'm not PRing or getting a personal record now anymore. I'm old enough now. My goals usually is just get to the gym, and that's why I joined a CrossFit gym, because I don't have to think about the workout. I have a community of people that kind of encourage me, and my second goal is don't get hurt. So I get in there, if I even just stretch out, I've won, okay? So that's my goals. Maybe your goals as well, maybe not. And then there's a soul component of us. There's an emotional and mental side of us. So we talk about emotional awareness. How do you become more emotionally aware? I recommend writing a journal at the end of the day. Hey, I was angry today. Why was I angry? And keep asking yourself why. Like a 5-year-old or 7-year-old saying, why did I do that? Why did that? And I guarantee you can find a reason that you were angry with somebody or jealous of something and had nothing to do with the person or the situation, but it probably called back to your childhood. So, anyway, just an example. You don't have to do this. Mental, this is what developing, read, learn, practice. So the best way to learn is actually to practice. You can't just read a book and think like you're gonna be a basketball star just because you know how to shoot. You actually practice shooting. So yes, we are talking about practice. And then there's a spiritual side of this, right? So whether religion you are, whatever the religion you are, you don't have to be religious, but there's a thing about being in solitude, being by yourself, to practice just being alone. Okay, so introverts like this, maybe extroverts won't, but one of the things I like to tell myself is do one hard thing every day. Because doing a hard thing every day forces you to learn and forces you to develop. So for introverts, it could be trying to meet 10 people per day. Or perhaps you're speaking to 100 strangers in a room. For extroverts, maybe it is being alone for 30 minutes and not having your phone on and Wi-Fi. So do a hard thing. I'll give you an example of what I do every day. I do several things every day. Have you ever heard of cold plunging?
Yeah.
What is that? Yeah? How much? Who cold plunges? Oh, okay. Do you guys have one of these expensive cold plunges? No. They're $6,000 or $7,000. You know what I have? This is a bucket from Ace Hardware. This is $100. You know what's nice? Yeah, it's a harsh top, right? Exactly. It's a $25 cover. You know what's nice about living in Chicago? The winter time. All you leave is a bucket of water overnight, and the water gets down to 40 to 37 degrees. I challenge anybody. So let's say you don't have a bucket, and you don't maybe live in an apartment. I challenge you right now, this time, okay, everybody, to turn your shower all the way cold in the morning and stay underneath it for at least 3 minutes. Okay? 3 minutes does not sound long. I know some of you sit on the toilet longer than 3 minutes, but it's a long time when you're suffering. Okay? So put your head under water. Just I dare you to do it. Do 1 minute if you want. But I guarantee, for me, it's my best return on investment because after 3 minutes, I feel alive. Yes, I'm cold, but whether you believe the science in terms of brown fat or whatever, at least mentally, the dopamine, I'm awake. And then I go work out at CrossFit. And so I go right to the 5:30. I've done cold plunging every day since I've been back from China for 2 weeks. I even did this morning, everyone. So I'm not lying when I say I don't want to do it, but that goes back to my process. I wake up at 5 in the morning, I just get into the tub, and then I go right to CrossFit at 5:30. That's every day. Process. Also, I wanted to tell you guys I did every day, so that's results. So, yes. Okay, but here's the reality. People ask me like, well, what do people say at 5 in the morning when they see you in the tub? The reality is nobody's up at 5 in the morning, okay? It's dark, unless they're walking the dog. And most times they don't make eye contact with me because it's 30, 40 degrees out there and I'm like in the swimming suit. But the reality check is like, nobody's really thinking about you. Everybody thought about Mother Teresa? You guys know who she is? Orphanage, orphans, hundreds of thousands. When's the last time you talked about Mother Teresa? Or Queen Elizabeth, 100 years old, probably lived through several wars. Major influence in England, passed away about a year ago. When was the last time you thought about her consistently? Billy Graham? These are major influencers of the world, but nobody's really thinking of them consistently. And I'm willing to bet that if you're in here listening to me in SBA, that you're not a Mother Teresa or a Queen Elizabeth or a Billy Graham. So what does this mean? It's not to put you down and say that doesn't mean anything. It should allow you to say, I can take as much risk as I want because nobody's gonna remember it anyways. Or it's not gonna be something that people are gonna think about 100 years from now. Does everybody still remember their great-great-great-great-great-grandfather? Or maybe just even three removed great-grandfather, great-grandmother, you know? As you go down the line, people aren't thinking about you. That's just the reality. But you can still influence and inspire the one person you're next to. You can still influence and inspire the family member or son or daughter or a cousin that's next to you. So yes, nobody's thinking about you, but you can still influence and inspire people. Okay. I hesitate to bring this up because the last time I brought this up was a downer, but I want to honor the memories. So these two numbers I'm giving you is 1, 2, 3, 4 is the hardest day of my life. 2, 3, 4, 5 is one of the best. And sorry guys, here we go. December 3rd, 2004, Specialist David P. Malenbrock. I was his platoon leader in Iraq. And what happened was, I had already moved on from being a platoon leader, so I moved on to being a project resource coordinator for the Corps of Engineers. So my former platoon was inspecting the roadside bombs, cleared the route, and then when they're driving back, somebody had laid an IED and it exploded, and so David Malenbrock was hit. He was 20 years old. He left behind a 19-year-old wife and a 2-month-old daughter. This year is his 20th anniversary. This year, his daughter, Cadence, is going to outlive him. Why I bring this up, and not to bring it down, is because I want to show you the perspective. Like, what we do, nobody's dying in what we do in business. Like, nobody is, like, if you don't make that deal or that business deal, like, yeah, you lose thousands of millions of dollars, it's okay. These are the guys that I graduated at West Point. I remember all of them, actually. Joe Lusk, Andrew Hutton, they died. And George Patton had a great quote. It's foolish and wrong to mourn the men who died. Rather, we should thank God that such men lived. Now, these men sacrificed their lives for America, right? And they would want you to honor their memory by living a true life. I remember when I was 24 years old going out in Iraq. And I was like, okay, this could be my last day. Am I ready to meet my maker? And honestly, at 24 years old, you're just like, yeah, let's just do it because I got a mission to complete. I mean, there could be other factors. Maybe, you know, as men, they don't develop a brain until they're 26, maybe that. But I was ready. And we can honor these memories by living a life that's true to ourselves. Now, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. That's why they call it present. So, and I know this because I've lived in China. Right? The heart of the enemy. Remember now, my parents are from Taiwan. So not Thailand, Taiwan. And if you know China and Taiwan, there is a little bit of a conflict, a dispute on who owns who. But I went to Beijing and I lived there. And those people didn't choose to live there. They were born there. And I don't think they would want you to think about the government that representing them. Just like we probably don't want to think about our government representing who we are, right? But they didn't choose where they're living, just like you didn't choose where you were born, but you're living here now. So, what is the key ingredient of leadership? The key ingredient of leadership is that you have to care. Soldiers have a saying, we have a saying saying, soldiers don't care what you know until they know that you care. So in terms of leadership, the key ingredient of leadership is you care. You have to be able to care, even to the point of love. Now, when I'm bringing love into the business, you know, it's appropriate, right? Valentine's Day was yesterday, so I still have 24 hours to talk about love. And I want you all to think about someone you care about, like your spouse, your child, some of you like your pets more than people, that's okay. You love your pets, you love your pets. And I go back to one of the oldest wisdom literatures out there that talks about love. You guys may know this is said in weddings all the time. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast. Now, I've heard of people going to weddings and say, well, I gotta be more patient and I gotta be more kind. But if I look at this from a prism of nonviolent communication in terms of needs, and needs is love, then one of the ways I can check myself whether I have love for someone is, am I patient with them? Am I kind to them? Am I not envious? But I want the best for them. If I don't have these emotions or symptoms, then just basically tell me I don't love them, which is okay, but just be real about it. At the very minimum, in terms of leadership, you have to care about people. But love is the strongest motivator. And soldiers talk about why would soldiers go and die for the country when they didn't know maybe the reason, right? So for instance, going to Iraq, I didn't know the strategic reason, but I knew as a platoon leader that these men counted on me to bring them back home. And that was enough motivation for me to sacrifice my life. If these 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds are willing to sacrifice life for the country, then you can, as a leader, sacrifice yourself for the good of the community and for other people. How do you get to love somebody? You can't learn about their stereotype, culture. You have to change by getting to know people individually. Yes, individuals. This is where you get to sit down with somebody and learn about their background, learn about why they chose the field they did, what are their passions. We talk about China a lot. I lived there for 4 years. I still have connected. I'm married. My wife is Chinese. You don't change culture from the outside. You have to live there, and you actually change it from the inside. So when we talk about changing culture, we're talking about you have to be there and do it with your actions. So there's many things to talk about in terms of bids. This is the Gottman Institute. I really love what Gottman does. He talks about it in terms of marriage. He talks about, when you give out a bid to interact with somebody, they have 4 responses. 3 are negative, 1 is positive. So this is a marriage in terms of respect. I won't go into it, but it's a very succinct and objective way of seeing whether or not you respect somebody. So for instance, imagine you're somebody you respect tremendously, like a celebrity. It could be a celebrity, maybe it's somebody like Taylor Swift, maybe it's Justin Bieber, maybe it's like a mentor. If they were to walk into this room, would you not all pay attention to them and listen to them? So that is how you know you respect somebody. I've had this happen when I left the military. The first time I was talking to my colleague, and we were just talking, and then something more important came up. Now in the military, somebody's rank. They know exactly what they've done, what unit they're with, what rank they're at. So you know generally how much respect to give them. But in social settings, you don't know that, right? It was the first time I was able to see somebody just have a conversation with me, and all of a sudden just turn to somebody else and talk to them without just saying, "Oh, excuse me, I want to talk to them." Just niceties at least. And so these are soft skills that you learn only by interacting with people, not in the textbook. I give that example, but you can still use psychology to back up your actions. And these are principles that I've learned as an introvert to deal with people in normal environments. So 2, 3, 4, 5. That is April 4th, 2023. See how that works? Year goes before the month and date. So 2, 3, 4, 5. This is Serenity Hope Chang. So who is Serenity Hope Chang? You can blame Doug for this one. He's going to bring a picture of my daughter. That's my daughter. Her U.S. passport. She's a U.S. citizen. And some of you may wonder, why did I name her Serenity? It's actually based on this thing called the Serenity Prayer. You guys know Alcoholics Anonymous. I talked about the Serenity Prayer, but this was actually the first quote, my first job in the Army in the office that was placed on there. And I've never forgotten. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, so I have gotten my story. I got married in Turkey during COVID. I was, homeless for 2.5 years. I was in Taiwan for a year because I couldn't get back to China and I couldn't get back to the U.S. Whenever I look at my daughter, Serenity, I think about this. You can't do everything. You do something. And one of the reasons why I wanted to volunteer and talk here is not just because I want to introduce myself to many people. It's because I believe in participating in influencing wherever you can. There's another generation of future leaders that's growing up here. And bad news, folks, I don't think Motorola is building another campus. I don't think they're building another museum. There's no big Motorola that's going to be happening here, especially since 2020, 21 pandemic. So who's going to fill that void? In my opinion, it's the small business leaders that surround here in the Schaumburg Business Association. We're here, we need to step up. We are not only influencing ourselves, but there's another young James Chang who wants to join the Army and be something in the world. And they've grown up here in Schaumburg. So we have one life. Live without regrets. Love each day, make a difference, take that risk. Everyone won't remember it, but somebody will remember you. It's not just for the community, but also to raise up the next generation of leaders. Here are some resources to back up, some books I recommend. I'm gonna give it to my ambassador, individual influence, Greg. She's the reason I joined SBA. Well, thank you all for coming here and just want to just inspire you to say that we can do something together as a community. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.